Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber. Closed doors. I hereby declare House of Representatives of the 114th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee now in extraordinary session. Will the members please stand? Will the visitors in the gallery please stand and remain standing through the Pledge of Allegiance? Representative Zachary will serve as chaplain of the day. Representative Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, let's pray. Father, we love you. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for your goodness, Lord. Thank you for this day. What an incredible day, beautiful weather, Lord. Just a reminder of your faithfulness, Lord. We love you. Thank you for the opportunity you give us to serve. I pray for wisdom as we conduct the people's business tonight, Lord. I pray, God, for guidance and direction. Thank you for the incredible responsibility you've given us to serve in this assembly, Lord. Thank you for loving us. Thank you for Jesus. In your name, amen.
Representative Zachary leads the Pledge of Allegiance.
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Clerk, please take the roll.
Roll call.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 96 members present.
Let the journal reflect Representative Freeman, Haston, Pearson, and Raper are excused. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Welcoming, honoring, and announcements.
Welcome, honoring, announcements. Oh, sorry, Representative Freeman is here. Sorry, they said you were gone. Representative Salinas.
Thank you, Ms. Speaker. I just wanted to welcome members of the Asian Pacific Islander community. They just had a celebration today is Lunar New Year. So to our Asian friends that are here, Xing Na Kwa Le, which means Happy New Year. I enjoyed the celebration that they had in Cordell Hall, and I had the pleasure of sharing and breaking some bread with many of our Republican colleagues as we celebrated Chinese New Year and actually Lunar New Year. And I hope everyone takes into consideration the amount of richness that our immigrant community adds, not only here at the legislature, but beyond that, as immigrants and Black people have created and built our cities and our state.
Representative Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tonight I have my lovely bride of 35 years here, Laura, and I think she's holding up a sign that says, "I love you, Ron."
I see a few of them, I do. Representative Lynn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members and Mr. Speaker, please help me welcome my handsome husband, Michael Lynn. He is my driver tonight, and I appreciate his love and care.
Representative Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you would just welcome, we have one of our Memphis Shelby County School Board members, Tamarcus Porter, who has come to watch us do business today. Welcome to the legislature.
Representative Hammer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Want to congratulate our many Tennessee public schools today as the Department of Education released the National Assessment for Education report card, showed great achievement gains. So give a big hand up for our public schools. Thank you. Conversely, Florida had a 20-year low that happens to coincide with their recent release that showed they had over 500,000 students in a voucher program. So I don't know if there's any correlation with that or not, but it's worth noting.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad you cleared this alley out over here. I couldn't get to the Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to mention ties for turns that's taking place on February 10th. Thank you for them, the smattering of claps. But what I will mention is that Memphis and Shelby County Schools is a level 5 school district according to the news today. So thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to Memphis and Shelby County Schools for all your hard work.
Further announcements. Welcome and honoring. Representative White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and not to be left out, as someone who actually sits on the NAEP board for the last 4 years, when we came back into session in January 2021 to address the COVID, we put some measures in place which are paying off today. Tennessee is now in the mid-20s in reading, fourth grade reading and math, which we're doing well. We need to do a lot better, but we're holding our own. And I think the things we put in place in 2021 are actually paying off. So congratulations to this General Assembly.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction to resolutions.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions properly filed be introduced pursuant to Rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Joint Resolutions congratulatory memorializing.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all Senate joint resolutions congratulatory memorializing and let be placed on the consent calendar pursuant to Rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Resolutions lying over.
Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions lying over be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction to bills, Senate bills on first consideration, Senate bills on second consideration, House bills on second consideration, petitions, memorials, reports from standing committees, reports from select committees, calendars. Mr. Speaker, the House has a regular calendar.
Call it first bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2 of the extraordinary session by Leader Lambert and others relative to emergencies. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Leader Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 4.
Leader Cochran moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 4 without objection, so ordered. Leader Cochran.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 4 on third and final consideration.
Leader Cochran moves passage of Senate Bill 4 on third and final consideration. By second, Mr. Clerk, call it first amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Leader Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 6002 will hopefully make the response to disaster response. We'll make that more efficient by waiving certain requirements involving unemployment, as well as making it easier for TEMA to come in and quickly respond to those disasters from a simple request from the local government. That it will reduce some of the bureaucratic tape and some of the steps that are currently required. With that, I will yield any questions and I renew my motion.
Leader Cochran renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 4 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has any member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 96, no nays.
Senate Bill 4, having received constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. Most reconsider tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 3 of the extraordinary session by Leader Lambert and others relative to disaster relief funds. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute conform to Senate Bill 3.
Representative Hicks moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 3. Probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 3 on third and final consideration.
Representative Hicks moves passage of Senate Bill 3 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Amendment 1 by Representative Mitchell. Mr. Speaker, it was timely filed.
Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is an amendment. You know, Representative Hicks has a great bill. It helps governments. It helps businesses. It doesn't help the people who their houses were washed away. You know, I lived through a flood in 2010 in my community. I had 2,497 FEMA recipient households in my community. You know, when people wake up one day and they have a nice home with all their belongings, and the next morning they have nothing, At that time in 2010, FEMA would give you $29,900. Now FEMA will give you $42,500. If they have a $100,000 house or a $500,000 house, and they lost $10,000 worth of contents or $200,000 worth of contents. So we're doing nothing for homeowners in this. We're building roads, we're building bridges, and I'm glad we're doing that. But to build a bridge, to build a road back to a home that's washed away really doesn't do much for these folks. So we've got $2.1 billion in our rainy day fund. If a flood isn't a rainy day, I don't know what is, folks. So I'm offering an amendment to give $50 million, $10,000 grants for 5,000 homeowners to help them restore their lives. And I mean, it's not much. $10,000 is not much, but it's a start. It's showing that we actually notice that they lost everything. This bill, he's doing a lot. But these folks that have lost everything, we need to step up as a legislature and show the citizens of Tennessee, we see your loss. We stand with you. So this volunteer neighbor fund that I'm suggesting we create, and I would love if anyone in the future in the regular session would increase this amount, which it should be, to help these folks. I mean, I saw my neighbors, when you lose your house, you've already got a mortgage on it. Now you've got to get another mortgage to rebuild it. There's no vacations anymore, folks. There's no taking your kids on spring break. These folks are going to have 2 mortgages now. We can do a little bit to assist them, or we can ignore them. This week I'm here to help people who lost and who need our help in East Tennessee. I don't know why everyone else is here, but that's the only reason we should be here. I don't know what the governor's purposes of being here. North Carolina helped their people in 11 days. 11 days. They had a package and a special session to help their people. We're 120 days in, and we're not even coming close to what the first package of North Carolina had. North Carolina had 3 rounds of help for their folks. I don't know why we waited so long. Why, if there was something else, that we were trying to, twist people's arms over. But we ought to help our Tennesseans who are in need. $50 million is a drop in the bucket for what these people need. If we can't do that, we need to just stop. North Carolina has a $33 billion budget. We have a $56 billion budget. Let's do something. Let's help these.
We have a great debate up here, but you didn't say you wanted to move it, so I'm assuming that you probably don't, or you do. Representative Mitchell.
You ran my clock out, sir, and I shut up when you ran my clock out. So I'd like to move the amendment.
That's some new math. I don't know. Representative Williams, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's amazing that your abilities are so great. You can make time move faster. But I just wanted to take an opportunity to say before us, you have your colleagues up here. They represent over 350,000 members of the state, or citizens of the state of Tennessee, and they're standing up here today because 500 homes doesn't nearly touch the impact that happened because of this weather event that we saw. And so in this instance, Chairman Faison has a bill that you're going to get to see a little bit later on today that helps more people in a smaller fashion that allows them to do that, because we want to make sure that we provide resources to every citizen that's impacted by this tragedy, including all those in every one of the communities. And under this current amendment, it would not do that. And so with that, Mr. Speaker, I move to table this amendment on the bill.
It's a proper motion, probably second. Department of Situations, Representative Mitchell has moved adoption of amendment number 1. Representative Williams has moved that motion to the table. That cuts off all debate except for the sponsor. Representative Mitchell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Faison has a nice little bill that's going to give people maybe $500 or a little more on some occasions for their property tax they already owe. So it's gonna equal out to zero. You know, they're gonna get 30% maybe above that $500. So he's gonna give them another $150. I'm sorry, when you've lost everything and we're gonna give them $150, I mean, why are we here? I mean, if we can't afford to help our fellow Tennesseans any more than that, we should be ashamed, as the governor should be ashamed for waiting 120 days to help these people. You know, the governor, where's he been? Where has he been? North Carolina, 3 rounds of relief for their citizens. This governor, absent, AWOL. But he's worried about his other, pet project. I wish he would have spent as much time on children being shot in schools as he does caring about getting a voucher bill passed in this house.
Representative Mitchell, I don't think that's your amendment, so I would ask you in your last 20 seconds, don't go off the script. That has nothing to do with this bill before you. Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
It doesn't have anything to do with this, but it has to do with the integrity of the governor.
Representative Mitchell, you're done. Thank you. Department of Situations, Representative Mitchell has moved adoption of amendment number 1. Representative Williams has moved that motion to the table. We're voting on the tabling motion. All those in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 74, 23 nays.
The ayes have it. The motion to table amendment number 1 is tabled. Approved. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Amendment number 2 by Representative Mitchell, Mr. Speaker, was timely filed.
Representative Mitchell, you're recognized on amendment 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will withdraw this amendment because obviously we're not here to help these people in East Tennessee whatsoever. We don't really care about those people. We're here to do something else. Obviously, we're here to pass some vouchers and bow down to some lobbyists.
Representative
so
Mitchell,
I withdraw.
You're out of order. You're out of order. You're out of order. You're off your amendment. Amendment number 2 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Amendment 3 by Representative Fritz. Mr. Speaker, it was not timely filed.
Representative Fritz, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the sponsor for this bill. I appreciate your willingness to help your neighbors and our neighbors in Tennessee. Amendment 2533 modifies language to limit the scope of the legislation to Hurricane Helene damage in Tennessee only. The amendment retitles 94216 as the Governor's Helene Response and Recovery Fund. The amendment returns any unused funds available on June 30 of 2030 to the general fund unless the provision were later removed. And I don't think we should cede any Tennessee Constitution Article 2 powers in times of emergency or in response to emergency. So it is therefore respectfully and offer in a friendly manner this amendment.
This is a motion to consider amendment number 3. You've heard the motion properly seconded. We're voting for consideration of amendment number 3. All those in favor of considering amendment number 3, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 19, 78 nays.
In accordance with Rule 60B, having failed to receive the necessary 2/3 vote, the motion to consider amendment number 3 fails. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We could stand up here for hours describing what took place on September 27th. The devastation was unbelievable and hard to describe. It's amazing what can be washed away in a very short period of time. All I can say is the Lord giveth, and he can definitely taketh away. But it's also amazing just how quickly recovery can start when good, hardworking people, businesses, and government together kicks into action. Local governments, including county mayors, emergency management systems, sheriff's departments, fire departments, including swiftwater rescue, search and rescue, water departments, local power companies, churches, and even local private contractors with heavy equipment was on the scene immediately. Yes, there was confusion and it was sometimes very disorganized, but it was unbelievable just how people put things aside and worked together. We witnessed people with very strong personalities calm down, and we also watched people with meek personalities step up to the plate. It was amazing. The people that were affected by the flood was, I believe, in shock. Most had just lost everything that they had on this earth, and yes, some lost loved ones. That's when volunteers and churches really stepped in. Neighbors helping neighbors. It makes us proud to say that we are Tennesseans. This state stepped up in an unprecedented way. TEMA and TDOT had boots on the ground instantly. They had evacuated the Unicoi County Hospital from the roof. TEMA was assessing damage and organizing all efforts. TDOT had miles of highway and many bridges to assess, and many needed to be inspected. And this was only the beginning of a long and expensive road to recovery. To our county mayors, I'm not sure when you run for that office that you are prepared for the disaster like the one that Helene left in its path. We watched them try to make sense out of what had just happened. We watched them comfort people, and we watched them, most of all, lead. Our mayors worked so hard in keeping their counties in order and their people safe. You could feel the pressure. This really revealed to me just how much it matters who is in that role. All we can say is thank you. This bill accomplishes two things. First, Senate Bill 3 establishes the Hurricane Helene Payment Fund. This will help local governments manage loan interest for recovery cost. Local governments often rely on loans to cover upfront costs while waiting for federal reimbursements. This will allow the state to pay interest for the counties up to 5% annually for 3 years. Second, Senate Bill 3 creates the Government Response and Recovery Fund. This fund will provide direct assistance to affected counties, including but not limited to agricultural losses, unemployment assistance, and business recovery efforts without waiting for the federal process. Federal aid can take time to process, creating delays in the rebuilding and restoration efforts. The revolving loan fund allows the state to bridge gaps in funding, ensuring communities can begin recovering immediately after a disaster. How can we really be ready and be prepared for a disaster like Helene? It's so important moving forward for the state of Tennessee to be prepared to help our citizens of this state. And that's what this bill does. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Hicks renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Towns.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, obviously, I rise in support of the bill, but I want to make a few comments about the bill and our timeliness. We have 3 grand divisions. We have 50 states, 5 territories. We got 1 country. And when something of this magnitude happens, we got to respond quicker. I think about being in that fire out in Maui and just how vital and critical time is. We're doing the right thing. I would just like to have seen it backed up a little bit. So what I'm saying is obviously for the future. I listened to the mayors testify in our community, and it was heart-wrenching to listen to the mayors testify about what they had seen and what they were going through. Without this involvement, that area will never come back again. It would never come back again without the involvement of us at this level. It's 1 state. And the misery has been spread around the state, up in Dolly Parton's area with the fire, the tornadoes we've had here, stuff that's happened down in Memphis, up in East Tennessee. So as leaders, we have to get our act together to be able to really with surgical precision, to act quickly as we can to make our people whole. Because if we go too long, some people go over the edge and they never come back. Time. We got to be more mindful of time. And we got to put in place some plans, some future plans. One of the mayors was talking about they didn't have fire trucks. Well, maybe we can come up with some fire trucks that we have stay somewhere. We can move them around. I want to see some other good stuff done so when our people are hurting, we can get to them in a quicker manner. The mayor said that they need the money to build back. They tapped out. They don't have any money. They're broke. So we got to figure another way, get the regulations out of the way where we can get money to these guys and then we can build later. Because without the money, nothing's going to happen. You can't go to a graveyard without some money. People want money and they need money and they need it quick, fast, and in a hurry to make them whole. Now, it's that neck of the woods. It's been Nashville. It's been Memphis. It's been all across the state. And we're the leaders. We have to figure out what to do. This is nonpartisan. This is all about loving our neighbor, loving Tennesseans, loving human beings, and trying to make sure that they can come back whole and be grateful all the way. That's what I want to see. Doing good, but we got to do better. Support the bill, but we still got to do better. I'm talking to the whole General Assembly, not just you all, everybody. We got to do better because it's going to happen again. Mother Nature's going to do its thing again, and there's nothing any of us can do about it but pray. Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Thank you. Representative Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the sponsor and for the tremendous support that this body has shown Upper East Tennessee through its difficulties. Many members of this body have traveled to my district, the 3rd House District, Johnson, part of Carter, part of Sullivan, and part of Hawkins County. And I look around this room and I can't say thank you enough to the folks in here that loaded up their trucks, put vehicles on their trailers, came up and made a difference when nobody was watching and when we needed you the most. Mr. Speaker, I'm grateful to have been able to chair the Disaster Relief Committee in the special session. I'm grateful for this piece of legislation because it does exactly what we need right now, which is trying to reach people. We can focus on how much time that it's taken to get here. We can focus on things that are on the side. But the bottom line is our people need help. This is a tremendous first step. I believe we're going to see more bills and more funding come in the regular session, but this is where we need to start. For our first responders, for our people, for the nonprofits, for the various people that showed up, for the governmental agencies, we can't say thank you enough. And the neighbors that helped each other, we can't say thank you enough to each other. But Mr. Speaker, on this floor and throughout this special session, there's been a cloud that has hung over the flood funding. I am tired of hearing people in the other party politicize my district's needs and politicize their pain and their suffering and their devastation to the point where bringing amendments that they know will not pass, that are not serious. And it's disappointing because our people are suffering, not unlike other people that have suffered throughout the state at other times. But we need your help, and we need the help of the state. And this bill absolutely starts there and meets us where we are. And we're looking forward to the next steps that we can take starting next week. So, Mr. Speaker, sponsor, members, I can't say thank you enough on behalf of the 3rd House District.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate it. And thank you, sponsor, for this legislation. One of the great privileges of serving in this body is the people with whom you get to serve. And I just love the fact that we're providing this badly needed relief to Northeast Tennessee. Because all politics aside, Tennesseans help Tennesseans. We take pride in that. And on September 26th, 27th, and the days that have followed up until today, our minds have been on each and every one of you who are standing up here and those who aren't. Just like when the tornadoes hit Putnam County, our hearts and minds were on Putnam County. When tornadoes hit Nashville, y'all's thoughts were with us. When that tragedy has hit Waverly, our thoughts and minds were there because we're Tennesseans. We care about each other, and Tennesseans help Tennesseans. I think you agree, and you said as much in Finance Committee, this isn't enough. And I do hope we do more because the people in Northeast Tennessee deserve more. And they deserve everything this state has to offer. So I do hope we step up and provide everything that each and every one of your districts needs and deserves. Because it matters. And Tennesseans help Tennesseans. I'm proud to sign on this piece of legislation. I hope there's more to follow, and I'm going to hold you to that. And I look forward to working with you on that. And this bill is going to get bipartisan support because, once again, Tennesseans help Tennesseans. Thank you, Mr. Sponsor.
Representative Mitchell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, I'm kind of hurt that my colleague would say I would offer a disingenuous amendment to help his people. I got 24 votes over here for anything y'all want to lay on the table to help these people in East Tennessee. Need 26 of y'all to step up and help these people. You know, I haven't put anything over any of their heads and say, if you don't vote for this, I'm not going to vote for your flood relief. My side hadn't said that one time. We got 24 votes that will vote for anything to help East Tennessee and help our people in need. But a lot of people have told these people, if you don't vote for this, it's going to be hard for us to help y'all with y'all's flood relief. And several of them have caved, which I'm sorry. I'm sorry they've been put in that situation. It's pathetic. But for my colleague to suggest that I am saying something disingenuous, like I said, I had 2,497 people, FEMA recipient households, that got flooded. When you look at your neighbors and they got 4 feet to 8 feet of water in their house, they've lost everything. They don't know what they're going to do. They don't know where they're going to sleep that night. They don't know where their next meal's going to come from. And we have a governor that's going to wait 4 months to lift a finger to help them. And then he's going to put caveats on how he's going to help them. If you don't vote for my voucher bill, I'm not going to help you.
Representative Mitchell, that's not on this bill. You're going off the bill again, so you need to stay on the bill that we're on right now. That's your first warning again. So please try to stay on legislation. You're going off on something else that's not even on the calendar tonight. Representative Mitchell, you're recognized.
I'm sorry, Speaker, but you know, it's the part of the call. And
Representative Mitchell, the call does not pertain to this bill. You can only talk about the bill that's before you, not the call. Just the bill that's before you. You've been here long enough to understand it. I'm asking for the last time. Stay on the piece of legislation that is before you. Representative Mitchell.
Again, Alfred Amendment, a slight little, if I offered crumbs, I'd like to ask the sponsor of this bill, what's a homeowner getting out of your bill? What is a homeowner who lost his home could possibly get out of your bill?
Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, let me say that there is a lot of help for homeowners in Northeast Tennessee. Most of the people in Northeast Tennessee does not want to see government coming up their driveway. That is a fact.
Representative Mitchell, this is your warning. You cannot talk out from your seat when you're not recognized. That is your first warning. First warning. You cannot do it. Representative Mitchell, you know. Representative Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill has a mechanism in it to be able for money to be paid out to nonprofits that we need, third parties that can be paid out. We have all kinds of great, absolutely great nonprofits in Northeast Tennessee that can use this mechanism to help build homes for people. We're already building up to 20 homes. We've already finished 17. And we have a nonprofit that is committed to building 200. And this mechanism that the governor has put together can help all of that. And that's the reason that we're up here tonight. That's the reason that we want this tonight, is to be able to help those folks. Now, there's people out there that right now, it's still too soon. It takes a long time to figure out who needs these needs and who don't. That's the reason that this is revolving, and this can work for all folks, because this is not some one-time money. This revolves and goes for as long as we need it in Northeast Tennessee.
Representative Mitchell.
But why in the world would you reject additional help for your people? Why in the world would you say you don't want to help? I mean, there has got to be a number of people who are scratching their heads saying, why are you rejecting?
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I rise to join my colleague from Davidson County that's 2 seats to my left in saying to the members that are in the well who live this, who trudge through the mud, with your friends and your family members and your neighbors. I was there with the governor and both senators and Jack Johnson within days. I stood on a bridge with many of you that had been washed down the river by unrelenting force. And as you were picking up the lives of your constituents, the lives of them when bodies were still being buried out of the mud, I was proud of the fact that our governor was right there with you all. All of us are with you today. We will be with you tomorrow, and we will be with you forever as long as it takes, both Republicans and Democrats. This is not about personality conflicts or who you like or dislike or whatever politician you voted for in the last election. It's about y'all and all of your people in Northeast Tennessee who saw devastation and destruction like nothing I've ever experienced. And I've been through floods in Middle Tennessee, and I've been through tornadoes. I'd never seen anything like the power that washed down through those beautiful mountain valleys that on any other day are absolutely majestic. And I saw as your local mayors cried and held your constituents in their arms, because at that time, it's all they could do. But now we can do more. I am proud to stand today supporting all of you, because I trust you, not just as my friends, but as the voices of your district, because this is what you have brought to us, and you will bring more to say this is how we start putting the lives of your constituents back together again. I appreciate you all standing there together, and I appreciate you in continuing to instruct us. And I'm proud to say that most of us on this floor deeply care about what your desires are, because you've worked with your constituents and your local elected officials to get those roads back open, to get those schools rebuilt, to get those jobs back up and going, and to mourn with those families who lost so much more than we can ever possibly rebuild. Thank you for standing here today, and thank you for allowing us to stand with you.
Representative Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I call previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 3 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 97, no nays.
Senate Bill 3 having received the constitutional majority, hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Let the record reflect that Representative Haston voted aye on Senate Bill 4. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that brings the body to House Regular Calendar 2, Item 1, House Bill 6 by Representative Garrett and others relative to financing of transportation projects. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 6.
Representative Garrett moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 6 without objection. So ordered. Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 6 on third and final consideration.
Representative Garrett moves passage of Senate Bill 6 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Representative Garrett, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, Senate Bill 6 was brought to me by our comptroller. This bill will hopefully make government work a little bit better. It creates what's going to be called the Tennessee Transportation Financing Authority, and it's going to serve as a conduit issuer to finance projects under the Transportation Modernization Act that we passed in 2023. For those members that recall that particular act in 2023, it is a public-private partnership to create a choice lane. They've identified one already between here and Rutherford County for our public-private partnership for funding of those particular projects. We are creating what is called a qualified public entity that will allow our private partners to draw down financing opportunities from the federal government to make sure we can build those roads speedily. So it creates the Tennessee Transportation Financing Authority. One component of that authority will confirm and make sure that any debts that are incurred as a result of any bonding that we use, that the state of Tennessee will not be responsible for that debt if there's any type of default whatsoever. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'm ready to take any questions, and I renew my motion.
Representative Garrett renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Sponsor. Sponsor, when we were in committee, we talked a little bit about this, but for the record, I'd like for the public and people watching and those that didn't see committee to get on the record. Will this authority exist in perpetuity? Is there a sunset provision? And if so, how long will this board be in existence?
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the question, Leader Camper. It is a sunset, and it will sunset, I believe, in 2026, possibly 2027. And if it is extended, it'll be subject to this body through the Government Ops Committee, when and if it needs to be extended.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The other thing that I had concerns around was transparency and reporting and getting the information back, not only to the public, but to this body. Are there any provisions that you could talk about for the record that deals with transparency and monies received, going in and out, and how will members get access to be able to see that?
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good question, Leader Camper. I appreciate the question. This board is going to be made up just like the state funding board. So those state funding boards meet in the open. All of this is going to be subject to any Open Records Act, except for some proprietary information as it relates to bids for particular projects. But it's going to be done in an open setting and open committee, just like our state funding board operates today.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So there's no actual official report back to the body on any of this. You just have to watch the proceedings, get a copy of the records, be in the meeting. There's no official report back to us.
Representative Garrett.
That'll be part of the rules that the authority will promulgate and be before the Government Ops Committee on how that process will take place.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Two other points, Representative. There's a portion in the bill that talks about defaults and defaulting on a loan. And this entity being able to hold bonds. And we've had a history here in this state of paying as we go. We don't really do a lot of financing for our infrastructure, even though there's been time when we wanted, to do some financing. So this will operate a little different. They'll be able to issue bonds. What would happen if there's a default? Would the state be responsible, held accountable, have to pay it? How would that work with respect to public dollars?
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This legislation addresses that and says the state, if any of those those private partnerships do default, then those private partnerships are responsible. The state is not responsible whatsoever. Under this authority for whatever bonds or whatever debts issued, that obligation cannot fall on Tennesseans or the state.
Leader Camper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And lastly, Representative, why is it that we're doing this now, right? Regular session starts on Monday, and we're in the middle of a special session to deal with a particular issue, but here we are dealing with this funding board. Could you explain what's the urgency? Why do we have to do this right now during this special session?
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. To answer that as quickly as possible for delay purposes. If we can get this done now, the authority can be started. We can start procuring those contracts, and that construction for those choice lanes can begin immediately. As you know, a bill has to travel through very different places, and session could take 6 to 8 weeks to travel through the entire system. That could be late April, early May before this authority would be operational. We can get this thing operational faster, or we can get Tennesseans moving faster by getting those projects started, completed, so folks that can get to A and B quicker. So delay is the reason why this is an opportunity to get this legislation through, so we can get the authority started and we can get the construction started.
Leader Camper.
Lastly, so when we passed the Modernization Act, there was language in there that authorized us to create this instead of us just creating it and doing it all in the same time when we passed the Tennessee Modernization Act, Transportation Modernization Act.
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That legislation at that time didn't contemplate this with what we needed as a qualified public entity, so it didn't address it. And so that's why now this is what we have to do to draw down some of those financing opportunities that the federal government provides, because we have to have what is referenced by the IRS as a qualified public entity. And right now, absent this legislation, we do not have that entity.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I think what I heard you say at the on the end to that last question is the money that was appropriated during the Biden administration, in order for us to access those monies to get these much needed projects done, this entity was created. Is that correct?
Representative Garrett.
No, it's not.
Representative McKenzie.
So are you saying that these monies coming from the federal government has come since January the 20th? Is that what you're saying?
Representative Garrett.
I'm saying the opportunities are out there. I don't know when they started, so it could be the Biden administration, could be the Reagan administration. These are opportunities that are there, and all we need, and what this legislation does before you go down the political route, is to create a qualified public entity so we can have investment opportunities that are out there, that have been out there for a long time, regardless how much you want to praise the Biden administration and its failures to lead this country the last 4 years.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That was an erroneous statement. And just to edify you, it did come during the last 4 years during the Biden administration. Again, let's call things as they are. And to that point, these monies came from us. So to that point, I have some concerns. Isn't it awful loud in here, Mr. Speaker? Thank you. To that point, this entity, I have some concerns with the makeup of it. There's no one that the speaker, these organizations, usually the speaker and the lieutenant governor gets a seat on these. These are all pretty much governor's appointments, so there's no real diversity in terms of how we get to choose. It's the treasurer, the comptroller, secretary of state, governor's appointee. And so there's no one coming from this body or the other house over there in the Senate that's going to be part of this. So don't you think that should be part of this organization?
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think you're welcome to file a piece of legislation and amend this, or file something in regular session if you choose, if you want to change the makeup of the authority. It is exactly what our state funding board is. They're not appointed, it's created by this statute. So nothing's appointed, it is actually created by this statute. But you're more than welcome to file whatever legislation you want to change the authority. You certainly have that right as a state representative.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I guess I would ask, since I didn't create this, and this is to the earlier point, this is coming during an extraordinary session. It was kind of hard to dig in on that. But I guess my question is, why didn't you, the crafter and creator, whatever team, why didn't y'all consider having someone that represents this House and the Senate be part of it?
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once again, the legislation is created a conduit only to make sure we can draw down potential investments, to make sure we can comply with the Modernization Act that this body overwhelmingly bipartisan passed, and fund and create the ability for Tennesseans to move from A to B in a quicker, most cost-efficient way. That is made up of our state funding board, just like this authority is. Again, if you want to file any type of legislation to change that, you're welcome to do so.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as you said, I wholeheartedly supported and voted for the Transportation Modernization Act. But it doesn't mean that this body should now be removed from some serious decision making. Now, understand, members, that this body can set accounts that don't coincide with what state law currently requires for its interest-bearing accounts. This body can enter into contracts which normally go through an exhaustive process. And I understand why. It makes sense. I would just have liked for the speaker and the lieutenant governor to have had a say in this awesomely important but extremely powerful organization. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. To the sponsor, just a couple of questions for clarification. Is there a sunset on this?
Representative Garrett.
There is.
Oh, sorry, I thought they were going to answer. Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. I need those few seconds back, Speaker. And the sunset date is what, if you have it available, sir?
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's either 2026 or 2027. It's in the legislation. I can't quite get my hands on when the actual date is, but there is a sunset date.
Representative Hardaway.
And that date would be after, well, with the expectation that the bonds would be retired by then.
Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I can't speculate on what type of bonds might be negotiated, but there's rarely bonds that are 1 or 2 years. So the bonds will be an obligation that will probably extend out more than 1 or 2 years. And there may be a possibility that this sunset could be extended, but that'll be subject to the vote of this body through the Government Ops Committee.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. So I'll save a lot of the questions for GovOps, but the physical assets and the revenues are all pledged towards the bond issuance, correct?
Representative Garrett.
Can you clarify your question? I'm not sure I caught your question. You're asking what the collateral is?
Representative Hardaway.
What's the collateral?
Representative Garrett.
Usually the bonds that are issued by the state are what the private institutions will have. So if there's any default by the private partnerships, the private public relationships that we have to create these obligations, the state has no obligations to pay any type of debt that's on this particular obligation. If anything of our vendors or the private partners deal with, there's no debt whatsoever that the state is going to be obligated to, or any Tennessean whatsoever.
Representative Hardaway.
All right, thank you. And I understood that. That wasn't quite my question, but I'll just get to a bottom line. There's no obligation on the part of the state outside. There's no obligation on the part of the state that's going to impact bond ratings. Is that correct?
Representative Garrett.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's right.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. Thank you, sponsor.
Chairman Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the bill. This is a very important bill. And thanks to the comptroller for uncovering the fact that we need an authority. It's what it is. It's an authority, like an airport authority. This authority has the authority to float bonds if needed, but we don't keep those bonds. I'm trying to simplify this. The authority would sell those bonds to the contractor who cannot float bonds or cannot draw down federal funds. And once those bonds are sold to the contractor, they are responsible for the liability. The state has no liability at all. This is important to the infrastructure that we're trying to improve. The authority membership mirrors that of the State Funding Board, which is set up by the legislature. So it's the same members, the same people that we, I believe, appointed 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I hope that helps. Thank you.
Speaker Pro Tem Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll call previous question.
Previous question be called. Is there objection? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 6, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 80, 17 nays.
Senate Bill 6, having received a constitutional majority, everybody declare it passed without objection. The motion reconsider table. Call the next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 7 of the extraordinary session by Chairman Faison and others relative to emergency events. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Faison, you recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 7.
Chairman Faison moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 7, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 7 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Faison moves passage of Senate Bill 7 on third and final consideration. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call the First Amendment.
House Disaster Relief Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment Number 2.
Chairman Hill, you're recognized. Oh, Chairman Holsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate Amendment Number 2. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment Number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
House Finance Ways and Means Committee Amendment Number 1 filed as House Amendment 2, same as Senate Amendment 3.
Chairman Hicks, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate Amendment. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment Number 2 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Faison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, undoubtedly, if you paid much attention this week to the committee that Chairman Hill was chairing, you heard some amazing stories. You heard some heart-wrenching stories. You heard from our mayors. You heard from some of our members. And with your indulgence, I'm going to just tell you a quick story. Have you ever had a time in your life that you can go back and it's one of those aha moments, or a moment that 10 years down the road or 15 years down the road, you always remember that moment and you can go back because there was something that took place. There was something profound that you learned that day. The day after Hurricane Helene hit us, my little son Tucker, who's actually watching right now, he's 12 years old. And that Saturday afternoon, I got home. We'd been out working and helping people. It was terrible. He said, "Dad, can you take me down to see the Pigeon River?" And I said, "Absolutely, son, I'll take you down there." And by that time, where we live, I live about a half a mile off the Pigeon River. There's a bridge, and you could actually stand on the bridge. It was absolutely horrible. So my son and I went out there, and we stood on the bridge, and he kind of got choked up. My son Tucker has grown up playing in that river. He's caught his first fish in that river. He's done a polar plunge in that river. He's played in that river for 12 years of his life. And that river was damaged like he had never seen. Anything from propane tanks to animals, to sheds, to houses, to cars. It was just one giant mud heap. And my little son Tucker looked at me and he was all tore up. And he knew that people had died. He saw total carnage in that river. And Tucker looked at me and he said, "Daddy, will this river ever be okay?" The river he had grown up for 12 years playing in, he was torn up because of all the carnage. It represented everything that was wrong at that moment in East Tennessee. I looked at my son. I said, "Son, I want you to know that after devastation such as this, I want you to learn a life lesson that in spite of all the carnage and ugliness and how ugly this river looked, it was just a total mud heap. The banks are gone, stuff floating everywhere. It was nasty." I said, "Son, joy comes in the morning. And one day, you and I are going to come back out in the not so far future. And this river will literally be cleaner than it's ever been in the history of anybody that's alive today." And my little Tucker looked at me and said, "I don't believe you, Daddy." And I said, "Son, it's going to happen." I want y'all to know last week, my son Tucker and I crossed the Pigeon River. And he said, "Dad, let's get out and take a picture." I always take pictures there. Tucker ran over to the edge of the bridge and he's like, "Dad, come here and look at this. I went over to the side, and the Pigeon River's cleaner than it's ever been in the history of anybody that's alive. He looked, he said, Dad, I can see the pebbles at the bottom of the river. And I just wanted to share that story with y'all because there's hope in the middle of all the devastation. There's hope in the human spirit of what took place with all the floods came and rose and destroyed us. The love poured in after was greater than the floods that came. And we're eternally grateful to every one of you who are part of that. Democrats and Republicans alike were part of that. And I know I'm running out of time, so I'll briefly tell you what this bill does is we've set up a way for people who lost their property. Their property was damaged and they need a reassessment of the taxes on their property. What this is a grant that's equal to 130% of what your taxes would be. It's not much, like the gentleman from Nashville so snarkily said, it's not much, but it's something for some people that don't have anything. And I'm pleased that this body has got it this far, and I would be thankful if you took it further, and I renew my motion.
Chairman Faisons renews his discussion, renews his motion. Any discussion? First on the list, Deputy Speaker Zachary.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move previous question.
Previous question been called. Is there objection? Seeing none, we're voting. All those in favor of Senate Bill 7, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member cast their vote? Does any member wish to change their vote? Ms. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 97, no nays.
Senate Bill 7 having received a constitutional majority, everybody declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the regular calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business, scheduling, and procedural announcements.
Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, session will be at 9:30 a.m. in the morning. That is the only thing on the schedule at this time. Session at 9:30 a.m.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 97 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until 9:30 a.m. on Thursday, January 30th, 2025.
Without objection, the House stands recessed till 9:30 on Thursday, January 30th, 2025.